The CR11. Hey. What are my first impressions of the CR11? It's huge. It's a beast. I mean, the clean grain elevator on the other side is like a grain leg. It's like that big. I'll show you guys. Right away I noticed the outboard planetaries and the direct drive for the rear wheel drive. And I noticed it is completely different than my CR8090. So they have literally started with a clean sheet of paper, built this thing up, and it's taken years. Like, it's 2008-9 when they started kind of rough sketching some of this stuff, I believe. So we'll ask Cole. But yeah, this is totally awesome. So I'm with Cole, right?
Yep, Cole Sanford.
Okay.
Or J. Cole Sanford.
Okay.
Yep.
And we are looking at the CR11 from New Holland, and this is, I think, the first time it's been this far north.
Yeah, that's correct. It's at least in the U.S.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
there's so much to cover.
totally.
There's just so much to cover. But let's just start at the front and work our way back, and then we'll jump up in the cab. Starting up here.
Yeah. So like, if any of your fans and people that are watching the video have ever been around a CR, they know the DNA of the CR is the twin rotor system, twin rotor threshing and separating. And the old magic to that on the very first TR that we launched in 1975, the TR70, was the feeder house matched the width of the opening to the rotors.
Okay.
And that existed on our first self-propelled twin rotor in the industry, and that exists even today on the CR11.
Okay.
So it just, everything's gotten bigger,
Sure,
right?
sure.
So the feeder house width that you see here matches the total width of the twin 24-inch rotor. So when we jump to the CR11, we go from 22-inch rotor to 24. And so when we do that, everything gets wider on the inside of the machine. The feeder house is driven with a hydromechanical CVT drive, or continuously variable transmission, so that when we get up into the engine deck, we'll see that. But that gives us the ability to slowly move the feeder house in reverse or forward, and then, of course, when we actually are harvesting, to move it forward.
Sure.
So the speed variation and changes down there. There's some new stuff with how the faceplate is designed. We now pivot down here.
I noticed that. Yeah.
See the pivot point there. So we get that point closer to the action of the floor of the feeder house to match the header to the feeder.
The cutter, yeah.
Yep. Like on the FD250.
Makes
Draper
sense.
by MacDon,
Makes perfect sense. It seems like such a simple thing, but it makes perfect sense.
And then, but yeah, so some new neat tech there. If we kind of come on this side, we'll be able to see a little bit about the DFR drive. So it's kind of unique, and we'll talk about that when we get to the drive section. But that's really actually pulling an input shaft off of the left-hand rotor.
So that's right here. This is, let's see if I get this.
Yeah, that little gearbox
underneath there.
Yep, underneath there.
So that drives directly off the rotor.
Yep. Yep.
And what are the advantages of something like that?
Yeah. So now the DFR, which is the dynamic feed roll, that's really our system that we use for our mechanical rock trap, as well as helping move material into the rotors. Okay. And so the key word there, it moves material into the rotors. So that allows us to synchronize the speed of the DFR to the rotors. So if you speed them up or slow them down, the DFR state keeps that relationship. And that relationship is really important for throughput as well as grain quality. Okay. So it actually helps us improve that a lot. And coincidentally, because of automation or IntelliSense, it can change the speed of the rotors on its own. Okay. Based on what it's seeing with its sensors, with the automation system, and then that in turn will change the speed of the DFR.
So the farmer in me is wondering, like, you want them kind of matched.
That's right.
So you don't want to throw it into the rotors and lose a whole bunch of grain.
That's exactly.
But you also don't want it to like suck, like the rotors. Yeah, not feed enough. So you really, it's like a perfect balance between the rotor and the DFR.
Exactly. Okay. And there's a special ratio that they figured out in engineering. Actually, I don't know exactly what that value is yet, or they haven't told us. So they're still kind of quiet about a few things, but that relationship is very important for crop flow into the machine, as well as keeping the capacity up. You know, versus current CR today, we're seeing upwards 20-40% improvement in productivity, depending on the crop and condition. So, you know, these are tiny pieces of that puzzle to make that productivity improvement. And really, the goal at the end is to lower the cost of harvesting. That total cost of harvesting is what we're going to lower. Okay, so the next question is, while we're up here on the feeder house, what size head fits something like this? So that's going to be a big question. Oh yeah, absolutely. So with the FD series drapers that New Holland has by MacDon, they go up to 50 foot. Okay. So in fact, this particular machine actually has a couple hours on it. We were in the field in a train-to-trainer activity internally. We had a 50-foot head on it, running anywhere from 60 bushel wheat to 100 bushel wheat at some pretty decent speeds. And it was pretty exciting. But yeah, the truth of the rotors regardless of what CR machine you have, keeping them full is key.
It is, yeah.
And so the higher capacities are going to require larger headers. From a corn head standpoint, we'll be going up to 16 rows.
Okay.
With corn heads. More on that later this fall or late this summer when we get to farm progress. But we've got some new exciting stuff in that realm. But when we start to look at the capacities and the throughputs, when you increase those, you need to have a header that can meet those requirements.
Right.
And so they've done a lot of design work on some of the new products coming to meet those. So we'll have a head that marries to this machine.
Yeah, because this is like my first question. Like, okay, well, this thing's much bigger than the CR.
Right.
That CR over there has a 12er on already.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
so where will it stop?
We need to feed more material.
Yeah, that's right. And really, if we look at the crop yield, so corn, we're in the corn belt right now, where we're at here in Illinois. If we take a look at the last 50 years of yields, what have they done? They've went up.
Yeah.
And I told it to producers earlier today, and you were in the class. I said no one wants to go any slower, so everyone just wants to go 5 miles an hour.
Yeah.
But if we larger headers and higher yields, we're going to need larger capacity of the machine. Right. And so that's what's got to give. And so here we are.
Yes.
CR11.
Yes.
So we can kind of migrate around and kind of check out the tire set. So this particular model, we have it equipped with dual 710s. We can go up to dual 800s, as well as LSWs and the Smart Tracks.
And these are the Michelin, right? Or Mitas? No, Michelin.
Yeah, yep, these are Michelin.
So these are VF.
VF, yeah. So
that stands for, like, you can run really low air pressure.
That's right.
These guys.
So it's a flexion rating, and so the idea is we can say we want to carry more weight at a higher ground speed. To do that, you need to increase the sidewall strength.
Sure.
And so a lot of times prior to a VF, we would just put more air in the tire. We do that for capacity. Yeah. But then unfortunately, we compact.
Yes.
And so the idea was with the VF style tire, we can get the same carrying capacity, same speed with lower air pressure.
Yes.
We lower the air pressure, we improve our compaction.
We can also get tracks on this machine, right?
That is right.
There's probably lots of tire options. So that's unlimited. But when it comes to 567 bushel grain tank, 50-foot header. I mean, there's a lot of weight being carried here. So the tires have then the technology to carry that weight.
So I think LSWs have been really popular on current CRs. The 710 800 dual is not available on the flagship machine, but it will be on the CR11. And so that I think is going to be a pretty popular take.
Okay, let's hit on this threshing because holy crap, this is a long rotor. I'm just going to tell you, that's like my first impression.
Yeah, so total threshing area has increased by about 50% versus today's CR 10.90. And we've changed our concave set, so now it's a bolt-in assembly with a modular design, and then now we can take in and out modules as we need. This one is set up for wheat, so we've got small grain concaves up front, and then the bar and wire separator grade CC in the rear. And the bar and wire is what we would run majority, I'll say 99% of the time. Of course, when we switch to corn or soybeans, that's when we would go to a round bar or a universal concave, and you can just unbolt those and do one section at a time and swap those out. So from a rotor standpoint, the unique thing about it, a couple things. We have remote vanes across the top covers that allow us to help control material flow through the rotor, very similar to what we have in concept, I'll say, of what we have today on the flagship CR that was just over there. But it's quite a bit different in its design and the stepness of the top covers, and there's quite a few things that have changed there that we'll show even more about here come farm progress. So there's some really neat stuff there. The cool thing about the angle of the rotors, which is pretty typical for a twin rotor machine, is this kind of matching. We match that in north. That's kind of a known set to keep your threshing area closer and your separation area farther away, so that it has that air blast. That's kind of the reason the angle. But the interesting part about that is that angle is the angle of our crankshaft on the engine.
Yes, I cannot wait to see that. I've seen that in the slideshow.
So when we get upstairs, so basically we've taken the engine and switched it 90 degrees and tipped it down. And then we move the PTO to the back. So now the PTO is on the back and those shafts shoot forward and they're in a direct straight line.
Let's go look at it. Oh my God. Okay, this is my first time up here. So I gotta see if these people can see. Like, all right, this thing is sitting the same angle as the rotors are.
Yeah, that's right. So we basically switched the direction of it, so it's now 4.5 instead of left to right, and we switched that angle. So now the rear PTO that you see here is mounted up, in an upper, kind of at an angle. And now our shaft right here is our feeder hydromechanical drive for the feeder house. And that's the shaft that goes forward on the right-hand side of the machine and goes up to the feeder house. And then there's a shaft and gearbox assembly that's just right in here. And that comes out, that's actually down in the bottom.
Okay.
You won't be able to see it that well, but it's basically in line with that guy there.
Okay.
And that's what goes into the rotor gearbox. And that's what gives us that ability to have that drive pretty much right in the right spot.
Wow.
Yep.
This is cool.
Yeah, it's pretty wicked.
And this is a Cursor 16
liter. That's right.
775 horsepower.
Yeah. So it's pumping the ponies. And you know, when we start to talk about those capacity increases, this is where it starts.
Yes.
And you just don't add horsepower to an existing chassis. You have to change everything around around it to meet those capacity needs.
Well, yeah, you got shafts and bearings and like all that stuff that needs to get bigger and stronger.
Absolutely.
So,
so
wow.
If we want to, we can see inside the grain tank.
Look at this grain tank.
So this is 567 bushel storage. And there's some extra bin level sensors that give us the ability to really count the, I'll say, a percentage as we go to 100% on the tank. You know, within reason with the extra sensors we've got.
Yeah, so this is one of those sensors, right? And it's just a touch.
Yep, it's just a baffle deal.
Yep, just like that.
Yep.
So.
Yep. And then we can, from a cross auger standpoint, because you can see those here, we can shut one or two of those off depending on what we're doing. So we can shut them both off for cleaning out the auger.
Sure.
We can shut one off to go to half rate. So we cut our rate from 6 bushels a second down to 3.
Sure.
And that gives us basically like topping off trucks.
Okay,
Yep.
I see.
Yep.
So you're not, because there's a lot of material coming out of there.
Yeah,
and if you just need to top it off a little bit, whoop, over she goes.
Yep,
so
that's
a really slick idea. And the fact that you can separate the auger and those, you know,
in the cross augers.
Yeah, so you can clean your auger out. Especially, how long is that auger?
It'll dump 60 foot. So in the world of length of auger, we usually don't talk about the true distance because we start not centered, but we usually talk about center of the gap. So this I don't think this is particularly our 60 foot option. I think there's one that's longer than this yet. But this was dumping the 50 foot pretty much with these.
So, I mean, back to the point of shutting that or keeping that guy on and shutting these off.
That's right.
That's a lot of weight out there.
Oh yeah, exactly. So the structures, the analysis, all that kind of stuff, the topologic design that we use to design a lot of the parts. There's a lot of structure in this machine with not a lot of excess component in that structure to save on the weight.
Sure.
We want to keep the weight within a couple percent of the existing.
What is?
Oh yeah, so this may or may not make production. So I'll tell you, and then we'll ask Curtis. So this is just an access panel to walk into the grain tank, so we could open it up and walk the plant.
I've kind of seen that. Yeah.
Yep.
Otherwise, how do you? Like the current CR, you can actually climb up on it. But
So
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Yep. And then of course the cooler box assembly is right underneath our feet there.
Which so here's your rotary screens.
Yes. And
right.
The cooling fans are directly on this side of it, and there's 3 cooling fans on the other side of the rotary of the radiators.
So like, which brings up a good point. Now, like on a current CR or a lot of machines, that is sucking clean air from the side.
That's right.
Where a lot of chaff is.
Yep.
I've dealt, soybean dust is terrible. This is just like kind of a nice little enclosed area where there's not a lot of dust right here. It's all getting blown out the back.
That's right. And so that's how the Wizards design it, by switching the direction of the engine. That gave us the ability to put the cooler box in the right spot to grab clean air. Clean cold air, I'll say.
Sure.
And then we evacuate it through and across the engine and back across the engine deck. So it is a cleaning action.
There's not a lot of dust.
No.
Then that settles in place.
That's right. That's exactly right. So when we were running in North Carolina at that Train the Trainer event, we never really messed with cleaning the rotor air or the radiators or the coolers or oil coolers, condensers, and we didn't really mess with cleaning much of the back of the engine because it cleans itself.
Sure.
So it's kind of a natural kind of concept of just using the air you already have.
So, question: maintenance.
Yeah.
So how much fuel does this thing hold?
Yep, the way it sits, 396 gallons.
Whew.
Yeah.
So all day.
Yeah, all day. Yep. So the concept, and then of course it does utilize DEF. For stage 5. Sure. For compliance with the EPA and all that kind of stuff. But everything is designed such that you can run a full day.
Okay.
That's really what drives the size of fuel tanks of all of our vehicles that we have here at our event today.
No one wants to stop and have to fill up 120 whatever it may be.
Top off.
Absolutely. So it's just one of those thoughts that once you get the machine, then you're like, well, I wish this thing had a bigger fuel tank. But you guys already thought about that.
That's right.
So we don't have to worry about it.
That's right. That's
cool.
Right.
All right, let's head into the cab because I think that's going to be the next highlight.
Perfectly.
Put my soda there.
Yep. So I can lower the. It's a button in between there.
Okay. For lowering the seat.
That'd be the auto lower.
Auto lower.
Yeah. Yeah. So it basically has a sensor. It can automatically raise or lower based on the body weight or whatever.
Okay.
But yeah, a lot of changes in the cab. The big one is the IntelliView 12 display set. So if you turn the key backwards here and then to the on position, we'll let this all boot up.
Sure.
And I think this one is, again, a prototype, so there might be like some error messages that pop up.
Sure.
But don't panic. But yeah, this would be the IntelliView 12s. So IntelliView 12s, while they're booting up, it gives you a really good opportunity to remotely see the machine. So fuel data, def level, throughputs of the machine itself, harvesting data, all that kind of stuff is going to be pushed to our Field Ops app. So New Holland has a new Field Ops app that's going to be shown at Farm Progress, and it will be released later this year. And we'll also be able to remote view our display from our phone. So we can get our phone and we'll do a remote connection with the displays. We can also push software remotely, so software updates for the dealership. And the dealership also has the ability to have eyes and ears against error messages that you're seeing. So they'll know sort of sometimes more about what's happening than we will. Maybe we will. But that's a touchy subject, right? So from a data standpoint, your data as a producer is still yours. So we don't really have access to that. Some situations we might, but really it's because of diagnostic purposes.
Right, like trying to figure out grain samples and blah, blah, blah.
So, but that's on test units. That's not on customer units or anything like that. So it gives you that ability. With the new refresh things in the cab, we have new seats for model year 24 with a little bit of leather stitching.
Look at this.
Got the Holland leaf right there. It's pretty good.
Storage.
Storage. And
there's a cooler. I know, I've seen it.
There's the refrigerator. And then there is some storage underneath here, which actually gets HVAC. So there's actually a little bit of HVAC, so you can throw a bottle of water or a candy bar up there.
Keep it kind of cool.
And that exists on our current CR. But yeah, this kind of gives you the view of the IntelliView 12 display. Someone has played with our run screen items, so we probably will edit that.
I'm just going to hit
suppress. That's no worries. So this is kind of the view that we would have running through the machine. So yeah, you can just discount those because they're lower battery rolls and stuff because we have the key on. But this gives you kind of the bird's eye view of IntelliSense, so the settings of the machines, and then this is more of the yield and moisture type of data. So we'd have
you could have like a yield map here. You could possibly GPS, whatever it may be, and then you have your machine
data down here.
That's really cool.
And then each display is capable of 4 video inputs. So the machine, as is, the way we set it up, has one on the rear back on the engine deck on the rear, at the hitch, in the tank, and then on the auger. So then when we put the auger out, we can have the camera pop up.
It switches automatically.
And then we also have another camera, and that is our grain camera that's on the left. So we can send you a screenshot of what we're seeing.
But this would be inside like your sieves and your cleaning area. And then this would be your grain sample.
Your grain tank.
Your tank.
So this one here, obviously it's off because the machine's off. We're not harvesting, but this is where we would show your actual grain tank, grain sample, and then it highlights the kernels that are defects. So the splits and the MOG, it knows the difference and it highlights them, and then that's what the machine uses to make a decision on changing the settings.
And currently we have to do a kill stall. Essentially.
Now on current CRs, you still have a grain camera, but you don't have the ability to see it. So when we move to the IntelliView 12 and model year 25 on current flagship CRs, you'll be able to see that.
That's cool.
And then the console itself, this should feel pretty familiar. I'll steal this little deal out of the way. That should feel pretty familiar because it's a lot like today. And so we could take you out of a current CR, a current flagship, and put you in the CR11, and you're going to have a pretty easy time maneuvering the machine because it's going to feel pretty similar.
I was in the CR 8.90. We were riding that, and this is pretty much identical.
It's pretty close.
And my first thought was, okay, we're going to jump in this cab, and with all the things this can do, this is going to be really complicated. It is not.
No.
It is very well laid out, very simple.
it's
considering what we can do back there.
Yeah, exactly.
So
it's a blessing in disguise, really, because this is going to make the transition of going to the CR11 really easy.
Yes.
And then and all the extra things that we've added to the machine, you can still get access to with the toggles, as well as some of the things through the display. So I think, like for instance, I'm going to say the setting tab. No, which one was it? One of these. Here we go.
Okay.
So this is what we were using. Now these run screens you can set up however you want.
Okay.
But we were using this screen to do our changing when we were spreading windrows to dropping, or I'm sorry, spreading and chopping in the end rows, and then windrowing in the throughs.
Sure.
We would just come in here and toggle between spread and swath, change our gear of our chopper, and then roll on. And there's your counter 90.
And it would do it all for you.
Yep. Yep.
Wow.
Yep. So pretty slick setup. And
Yes.
it was a fun week. I mean, we had a blast using the machine, and I can't wait to see it in corn and soybeans.
Soybeans, yeah. So this hasn't been done in corn and soybeans yet.
Well, so this particular machine has about 300 hours, and it's done a number of crops. Just the internal training.
Sure.
Yeah. So we're going to go through all the crops here before too long. Obviously, field tests and other folks, other departments in the company have run more than enough.
Right.
Probably, yeah. You can never run enough, right? But
exactly.
But so it's seen a ton of crops. But what we've actually seen, in some of our internal training.
Okay.
Yep. For the marketing guys. Yep. So it's been pretty exciting on what's at stake.
I would say.
Yep.
Let's take a look at this huge grain.
Oh yeah.
Clean grain leg.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep,
That's
right.
That's
let's do that.
impressive.
So this side is where the grain, like you called it, the grain leg instead of the grain elevator.
Look at that thing. I mean, this is my hand.
Yeah.
Okay, this would be like, this is huge. I couldn't even hug it.
Yep.
So what's the spec? Like, how much clean grain can this thing do?
So when we're talking that 20 to 40% increase over current CRs, and 50% more capacity in the threshing, 50% more in the cleaning, it tells you it's probably another 50 or whatever percent more on the grain leg capabilities or capacity.
Yes.
So in fact,
put a bottle by
put a bottle there for reference.
No.
So like,
look at that thing.
Yeah, it's massive. And so to marry and to meet those requirements that we were discussing earlier, and to lower the total cost of harvesting, everything had to get its to get its size bigger. We can't just add horsepower. Right. We have to increase all the other components.
Holy cow.
Yeah. And so the cool part about this is it actually has 2 clean grain cross augers. So because of the way the cleaning shoe is designed, it's two sets of sieves essentially. So we have an upper front and an upper rear. Okay. Then an upper lower and a lower front and a lower rear. Okay. So those 2 sieve sets, the front sieve sets actually go to the clean grain cross auger. So it's actually coming over this way, and it dumps in here, and as the elevator rotates around, it takes that
because that's
away.
clean. That's through the machine.
Yep, that's through the machine. So that's through the first quarter or so of the cleaning shoe, and because of the capacity increases, and because of like what we do with today's pre-sieve on a flagship, that's about 10 to 15% of the throughput goes through there. Well, because of the values of all the things that it was doing capacity-wise, they needed another way to evacuate grain out. So they have this extra clean grain cross auger. And then, of course, your regular clean grain cross auger, which would take grain away from the backside of the system. Wow. And so this elevator has quite a bit of capacity, obviously, from just looking at it. It's tipped forward, and that's another function that helps it basically keep grain in the paddles. And then, of course, goes up to the sump. For the bubble up auger, and then goes on into the tank that you saw there inside the main tank. Notice no chains, so back to your point. Yep, more belts. Less drive chains.
No drive chains.
You got belts overall.
Yeah, you got a drive shaft.
Yep,
I mean that's awesome.
There's your shaft, and that's going to go down to the front gearbox on the feeder house. And that's what's going to drive our output shafts to the header as well as to the feeder house itself. And then this extra drive set that you see here, this is that deal that we were talking about inside the tank that splits the augers.
Oh, sure.
So we can turn on one, both, or none. And so we can do, this is the half rate portion that allows us to basically engage that front auger around.
And that's just with that hydraulic cylinder, basically.
Yep.
Cool.
And then when we were talking about the topologic design, which is like, we want the strength, but we don't need the weight.
Yes.
And so you can kind of see that in that bracket there that's holding that idler. So essentially what they've done is, they basically isolated the structure points. So where does it mount? And then what kind of load does it go through? And then what can we delete away to still have the same strength? and then you end up with a part that looks like that.
And it's cast iron.
And it's cast,
super strong.
Yeah, and it's been through all the testing. You know,
yep, there's one there.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's a scavenger hunt.
Yeah,
of sorts.
Yeah.
And then last but not least, you see this extra mechanism here.
Yes, I was going to ask.
Which is a kind of a neat deal. So, long story short, to get the more cleaning capacity that we wanted to go wider, wanted to go longer with the sieves. That makes sense. But with our with the current CR, we tip, we level.
Yes.
When we do that, though, if we get bigger with that, we have more and more dead space, and we had less and less dead space available because of what we were doing with the machine. So they came up with a concept that basically allows us to shake the sieves to the left or to the right to bias it based on our inclination, our slope.
Yes.
So basically, with that system, we can shake to the left or to the right, and that's the mechanism that does it. So this actuator will pull in or push out, and this linkage moves, and then the sieve shakes perpendicular to that linkage.
So you get a perfectly even sample across those sieves all the time. So you're not always overloading one side with like wheat or beans or something.
Yep, that's right. Yeah. So from a slope standpoint, for slope compensation, but then it gets even better because we can do the same type of thing. So this is the top two sieve sets.
Okay.
The grain pan is on a similar linkage, but it's repackaged and pushed under the grain pan.
And they're not linked.
They're not linked.
So they're separate.
Shake together, back and forth, but they can shift left or right independently of each other.
So this is like two combines in one.
Pretty much. When you got to double the capacity, yes, that's right.
That's what it is.
So the idea of the grain pan is now we have extra set of pressure sensors up in the front. We still use the ones in the rear, like today's automation combine. And we also split the loss sensors left and right. So now we can tell loss on left and right and air pressure left and right in two different spots of the shoe. So now we can tell grain distribution independent of slope. So if you have a situation when it's not loading properly, we can actually, the robot or the combine itself, the CR11 will maybe shake the grain pan opposite and then the sieve normal. Or both. It's really,
going to spread it out.
It's going to spread it out.
And use every square inch of that cleaning area.
That's exactly
and that's the whole point.
That's the whole point. It gives us more capacity because a lot of times that gizmo is really neat, but what the producer really cares about is, can I drive fast? Is the sample
can I get done tonight?
Can I get done tonight? And is there no loss?
Yes. And this is how it's all done.
This is how it's all done.
Yeah, whether we care about that or not.
That's right.
We just want to get done.
On your farm. Because Yep. And so really there's no operator input into that system. You basically just rock and roll.
Sure.
Yep, because it has a mind of its own. For that distribution. Now, of course, you can still set the sieves and all that kind of stuff. Like you
could if you were operator and you wanted to.
Make some adjustments.
Yeah.
But of course, automation is going to take care of that.
It is.
Too.
Yeah. Plus with the cart automation, it's going to be wild.
Yep. It's going to be fantastic.
Awesome.
All right.
I appreciate it.
No problem, Mr. Adam.
Yes,
always
and we'll
a pleasure.
See you soon.
Yep. Fantastic.
Right.
Yep.
Thanks for watching, guys. I had an awesome time here today, seeing all the new technology from New Holland. And I can't wait to show you guys more. I have stuff on my Facebook, on TikTok, all that stuff. So head on over there if you want to see some short stuff. I hope you really enjoyed this video. I enjoyed every single second I was here. And thanks to New Holland for having me down here. And I'll see you guys on the next video.